So we will be sharing how the City of Waukesha GIS staff has developed workflows to process and rectify drone imagery and produce high quality images at a reasonable cost. My name is Brad Bloomer. I'm the GIS coordinator at the City of Waukesha and have been in that position since 2018. Megan has been the GIS analyst for the city since 2020. There she maps parcels, creates maps and applications for various city departments, and supports the GIS program's goals of keeping data current and accessible. She studied art history and later cartography and GIS at UW-Madison. Outside of geography, she enjoys coffee, escape rooms, and frequenting Milwaukee's landmark movie theaters. All right. With that, we'll get into our presentation here. And I want to just give a little caveat as to like the intended audience for this. If you have an established drone program that you've been running for years, this might not be for you. This might be for somebody who either is interested in getting their foot in the door or maybe inherited a drone from some other department and don't know what to do with it or don't know what they can do without kind of committing to some heavy costs. This is what we've been doing in the last year. So a little bit about Waukesha. Waukesha is a city of just over 72,000 people. It's the 7th largest city in Wisconsin, largest city in Waukesha County and the county seat. We have 25 plus miles of service area. And the GIS program is housed in the Department of Public Works. Our 2023 budget is $14 million in capital projects. We also manage and kind of oversee new construction and development. So the problem that we have, and that probably everybody has, is that citywide aerial imagery collection is only done every couple of years. So new construction happens, public works reconstruction leaves out-of-date imagery, which is really confusing for people looking at our web maps. Cadastral data and addresses might be updated, but it doesn't look great to lay people. So you can have a new subdivision put in, new streets that seem to be platted or dedicated, and you don't actually see them. So there was a couple of solutions that we were investigating. The options are you could get an annual citywide aerial collection, which costs are going down, but it's still, it takes a long time to collect and process for the entire city. You might be waiting months to get your aerials, and they only really fly in the spring. It's expensive for what it is, and it's probably overkill because you don't really have that much change in most of the city in one year. So another option that the cost has really come down is small scale collection using a UAV or a drone. At our city, it was new and unproven. I should mention that the police department has a very active drone program. They have what they call the DTEC, the deployable technology unit. They have drones that they use for tactical situations, robots, cameras, all sorts of stuff. But they weren't really focused on aerial imagery for projects. So the cost of that would also be hardware to start up. And then are there additional ongoing costs for software to actually process imagery? So there's a lot of solutions out there. I'm just gonna touch on Esri's. There's like drone to map, which you can use to process aerials into orthos. That's at least $1,500 a year. Site scan is another one. These do different things, but the cost is still up there. There's also like Pix4D. There's lots of products out there. So that's kind of what we were evaluating. So the decision that we made was to basically do a pilot program. We were going to use remaining operational funds to purchase hardware. We have a small GIS operating budget each year, and we had enough left over to essentially buy hardware. And then we're going to try using existing software as much as possible. So yeah, as Drake is indicating here, didn't want to necessarily commit thousands to annual licensing before we could kind of prove to the higher ups that this was worth it. We did survey our departments to see if there was any interest. Community development was interested. There are some existing drone users. I mentioned the PD. IT also has a drone that they use kind of for like public outreach type things. But we really wanted to ask, like, hey, could you commit to going out and flying a DPW project if we told you that, hey, the street's going to open tomorrow. Can you go fly today? They didn't really know that they could drop what they were doing to help us out. Understandably so. That's not their job. So our plan was to get a foot in the door to prove the value of drone imagery at the city. So this is what we purchased. The DJI Phantom Pro 4 V2.0. The retail cost was $2,049. I'm going to recap all the costs that we spent on our pilot program here at the end. So this version includes a screen and remote. You can get one that doesn't have the screen if you have a phone that you can plug right into it. This model has a large sensor and a physical shutter, so it's good for photography. There's all sorts of products out there. Some start as low as $600. Those would probably be sufficient as well. This is just what we happen to purchase. So then Megan and I underwent the training and testing necessary to fly. If you're going to fly under the FAA Part 107 authorization, you would need to get a license. If you're flying under an organizational certificate of authorization, might actually be certificate of waiver, technically, you might be able to fly if there's some other part of your agency that authorizes pilots, like our PD. Not everybody that flies a drone in the PD has undergone the 107 authorization. That's a whole other presentation, I'm sure. Not going to get into that right now. What we did, we went through Drone Pilot Ground School. It's an online course that has comprehensive training and practice testing to prepare for the test. That's $200 a person. It's usually more. I think it's on sale right now, still for about $200. Then each person needed to take the FAA's small unmanned aerial general exam, which is $175, and then register the aircraft. I should mention that part of the reason we went through so much of this training is because probably half of Waukesha is in Class D airspace because of an airport that's in the city, which caused tremendous headaches for us compared to lots of other folks. Again, probably a topic for another presentation. All right, here I think I'm going to turn it over to Megan.
All right, so Brad kind of, Brad kind of explained the process of getting certified, getting the drone to City Hall. So we've got the drone out of the box. We've got our pilot licenses photocopied. We're ready to go. We're ready to go take some photos, start seeing what we can put together for our colleagues who, work on street reconstruction projects and so on. So we took the drone out a couple days, just started getting used to how it flies, like how to fly it around, kind of the mechanics of it. And then it was time to start collecting photos. There are some intelligent flight modes on our drone where you can set, you can fly up to a certain height. You can draw a path that it will fly along. We haven't spent too much time on those. We've found that really the best way to collect photos is to just manually fly up to a height and then fly back and forth. And just to be really intentional about the photos that you're taking. So Brad showed the drone a couple slides ago. The drone is up in the air. We have a controller with a little screen so you can see what you're flying over, and you can just tap a button to take a photo. So this is one of our really nice city parks. That pool was reconstructed a couple of years ago. We were able to go out, I think the day before it opened last summer. In our kind of standard aerial photos, the pool is all full of sludgy, wintry water. So we got the nice pool the day before it opened. There might be some people playing tennis. Yeah, we just intentionally collected photos, made sure there was lots of overlap so that eventually we would be able to patch these together. And that process is kind of called mosaic or photo merge. Somebody more talented than myself or with more time than myself could probably do this process by hand. Or if you don't have something like Photoshop, which is what we use, Our IT department has Creative Cloud. They've been really generous and allowed us to use Photoshop as well. So I use kind of one of Photoshop's automatic scripts. You open Photoshop, you go to File, Automate, Photo Merge, and you can select photos or you can upload a whole folder. I normally just leave the default selections in place. It doesn't take too long to process usually, probably 10 to 15 minutes. It's a good task to, start it running, go get a cup of coffee, come back and see what you have. And really the way that it works is you can see on the right image, each photo is a layer. And Photoshop has been able to clip and mask and kind of blend each of those together, identifying overlap between the images. And it normally works pretty well. Some of the challenges we've noticed, though, are that it is really important to have variation between images. If you have something like a grassy field, like a soccer field, and it's just you have a photo of grass, Photoshop won't be able to place that very well. Same with unmarked streets or pavement. Pickleball courts have similarly been an issue because that reads as just a really like a pattern, and Photoshop can't intelligently place that or interpret that. But otherwise it's worked pretty well. It's also, so it's ideal for processing 2D panoramas like this. So this is an alley that one of our engineers worked on reconstructing. If you wanted to move into 3D, Photoshop no longer supports that. I think they have a separate suite for 3D imagery. But for things like this, Photoshop works really well. And I'll turn it back over to Brad.
See if this is back on, testing, okay. So then we have a mosaicked, non-referenced photo that comes out, and kind of the output is these red lines don't actually exist, but if you picture all the overlapping photos, that's essentially what makes up, now this aerial of, in this case, this park. But the next step would be georeferencing. And again, because we're doing this on the cheap, we're not using a processing software. This is a manual process. So we certainly understand that, we can get software that'll do this for us, and we might get there. But the point of this is you're trying to prove that the aerial images are worth it to get to that point. So it's manual. Probably everybody has done georeferencing at some point in time. Pick a lot of control points. Since we're doing a lot of street projects, that's actually helpful because you can find sidewalk joints or, tar ceiling, filling in roads, catch basins. That sort of thing is a good reference because they don't necessarily move. So for bigger areas, you can have like 60 plus control points. The more you want to put on there, the better, just because, all the images that might be from slightly different elevations, maybe Photoshop's merging wasn't perfect. The more control points you can add, the better this is going to fit to your existing aerial. Then you have to add seam lines because we have all that overlap. We don't really want the parking lot. We don't want some of the apartment buildings or the edges of the images where there's a lot of building lean or lean from poles. So you need to create seam lines of where you want this to kind of overlay over your existing aerial. So we did this manually. You can have Esri software kind of create seam lines, but if we found it easier to go down existing features and create seam lines, or at least areas that'll look best when overlaid, especially because a lot of our images are full leaf on in the summer. So you need to either draw around a tree or decide how you want that to look. So then after you do the seam line and kind of mask everything that's outside of it, you're left with kind of this little snippet here of what's going to overlay on top of your aerials. So we take all those referenced images, we add them to a mosaic data set, and then we publish them out through our image service. So every time we have a new addition here, we add it to the mosaic data set, publish it out to an image service. I'm going to pause here for questions really quick before I go outside of mosaic images. Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah, I'll repeat the question.
Your collection, you're actually manually flying and mapping it yourself and not using any sort of app to do your flight plan.
Correct. The question was if we were flying manually or using an app to do a flight plan. We are doing it manually. Yeah, there's all those tools out there to plan your flights and have it go and collect that. Again, I think we'll be getting there probably sooner rather than later. But it does work to fly around and collect.
Because you have a DJI drone, right?
Yeah.
With DJI drone, there's like the built-in app, the ground station, I think it's called. I can't remember what it's called, but it's something from DJI. It's free to use with your DJI thing, drone. And I found that really easy to use. And if you weren't aware of it, then that's something I would recommend because it's free and easy.
Okay. Yeah, we found that the model of remote controller with the integrated screen, it's a little more difficult to like install things on it because it's not a tablet or a phone. So yeah, we've run into issues with that. I kind of regret going that route, but
There is a way to do it.
okay. Yeah.
Difficult, but there is a way.
Or maybe we'll just buy a new remote. I don't know. We'll see. Think, turn this back over to you, right? For photospheres? Yes. No, go ahead. Go for it. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you for those questions and suggestions. Definitely. So that's kind of been our process for collecting mosaic or mosaic images for documenting street projects. It's worked pretty well. We felt we were pretty successful at that. And then we started thinking about what else we could do with the drone. And one of the, the photo settings on our DJI drone is called a photosphere. And basically what it does is the drone flies to a certain location at a certain height, and then it will take a set of, I think, 34 or 36 photos, and it turns around 360 degrees. The gimbal tilts automatically, and you get this folder of what would be a 360 panorama. And you can kind of pull out some nice images from that. There are some nice like still photos you can get, but really the power of those lies in mosaicing them together and creating an immersive experience. So in order to get there, there are two conditions that need to be met, because basically you're taking a 2D image, you're turning it into a 3D image. Everybody in this room and online is familiar with that, classic GIS and cartography. So there are two conditions that need to be met. The horizon needs to be flat and it needs to kind of look how it's supposed to. And the edges of the image need to be flaring out and looking not how they're supposed to. And then second, the image does need to be a 2:1 ratio. And if either of those conditions are not met, the photosphere will look off. It'll be a really surreal experience. So we started doing some research and we found that in order to have it all, we needed to use two softwares. And those ended up being Microsoft Ice and Photoshop. And we got the process down to about 15 minutes per photosphere. So it was really nice because we can go out and take photos at 12:30. And by the time we leave at 4 or 4:30, we have something to publish out on our website, something to show for the flight that we went on. So step one of this is going into Microsoft Ice. Put your pictures on ice. A little pun there. Thank you. So it stands for Microsoft Image Composite Editor. And it's something that isn't really supported by Microsoft any longer. You can still find it on the internet. You can find downloads. I think that's what we ended up doing. Google it for anyone joining online. But yeah, there is a really nice interface. You can see it in the photo there. You can pick either individual photos or you can upload a folder. And ICE is going to automatically detect overlap between those. So you upload your photos, you tell it you want a photosphere or a panorama. and then it processes those. It doesn't take too long. And then what happens is you get this really nice interface where you can click and drag to distort the image how you need it to look in order for it to turn out later on. So there should be a GIF playing. I hope it's working for everybody online. But yeah, you can see, yeah, just the way that you're able to distort the image. Really nothing too fancy, pretty user-friendly in my experience. And then on the right, you'll see a couple of examples of what would happen in a photosphere if you didn't level out the horizon. So on the bottom, you're seeing kind of how things are supposed to look. The top photos outlined in red are the same, it's the same photosphere, but with kind of a curve in the horizon. If you were looking at this in a photosphere viewer, it would give you this horrible kind of tilt-a-whirl feeling. So it's just really not what we want for the viewers. So that's step one, Microsoft Ice. You process the images, you save your export, and then you're going to go over into Photoshop, or at least that's what I do. And that's where we're going to fix the image ratio to make sure that it's 2:1 and that it's going to work appropriately in a photosphere viewer. And this process has been pretty simple. I will just import, or I'll create a new document that's the right, 24 by 12 inches, something like that. Paste in the Microsoft Ice export, drag it to the appropriate size so that it fills in the width of the document, line it up with the bottom and the sides of it. And then I will fill in the negative space in the sky with content aware fill, which is really nice from Photoshop. Really the trick is getting, I don't know if you can see a mouse on here, but you want the two edges of the image to match up pretty well. One challenge there has been power lines. So if you have power lines going through the image, those may not match up quite right, or the colors may not match up quite right. And in those cases, it'll just be kind of obvious where the image wraps around. But nothing too horrible. The two bottom images are exports from Ice. Either of those would work. And then the upper right of the screen shows again why it's important to have a 2:1 image ratio. So the image in the upper left there, outlined in green, is going to be an image with a 2:1, or a photosphere export with a 2:1 ratio. The others don't have that. So you'll see that the bus and the houses, the cars are all kind of distorted. They don't look the way they're supposed to. It's giving kind of like some Salvador Dali. Or you see it kind of seems like you're down in a valley in one of them. So again, just the importance of making sure that those conditions are met, or if you're seeing one of these and you're processing photos, this might be the cause. I guess I'll pause. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, then we can go on to discuss the photosphere viewer.
Thank you, Megan. It's worth mentioning that, photospheres weren't really on our radar at all when we kind of proposed this project. And it was really just experimenting with through the flight software and the different photo modes that we saw photosphere in there. Thought, well, that would be really cool. If you'd use this, it's just going to spit out a photosphere. Well, it doesn't. It spits out a bunch of pictures that I think there are other softwares that'll stitch them together. I think maybe you can upload them to like SkyPixel. That might be DJI's like online image hosting thing. But we really were interested in knowing, could we host photospheres on our own web server? So we did some research and found something called Photosphere Viewer. It's a free JavaScript library, display 360-degree panoramas. I am not a web developer by any means, but I can follow instructions. So basically with this, you load like a JavaScript and CSS files onto your web server, you register it as an application in IIS, and have another folder shared on your server to actually have the images. And then it'll interpret a hyperlink with the parameters for the photo, and boom, you're hosting your own photosphere viewer. I'm gonna try to open this up. Still, it hasn't loaded yet anyway, but let me exit the PowerPoint for a second. And this one. Okay. So this is one of the outputs of the photosphere viewer. You know, this is processed from 36 images or whatever from the drone. And it just kind of gives you that immersive experience. You know, I've got a secret. I love photospheres because I think it's a lot more immersive and kind of natural to how people see the world than an ortho photo, especially if there's elevation or trees or you can't see behind something. So for this trail extension, you know, it really gives good perspective that now this trail goes behind this industrial building rather than terminating on this industrial street. And this is something that we can share out and anybody can use. So I'll show a little bit more of the photospheres in a little bit. We'll just wrap up the presentation here. We're going to move on to a lot of demos after this. So the summary of how this project has gone at the city in terms of feedback. What do I need to share now? Oh, I'm glad you're here. Oh, right. Screen two. Okay, thank you. So feedback at the city has been really positive from Public Works and from city staff. There's definitely a lot more interest in gathering imagery during projects, or probably before and after of like street reconstruction projects, just to kind of show the difference. And there's been a lot more interest in imagery for events and public outreach. So anything that you can better show from you know, a drone's eye perspective, there's been that interest. So to go through the cost breakdown, back to kind of the point of this presentation, as to what it costs for us between the hardware, training, the exam, registration, it was like $2,800. That's a one-time cost. You could certainly bring that down if you don't want to do the formal training. You could learn on your own. Maybe you don't need to do the FAA exam if you're flying as part of a larger group, or if you inherited a drone, you know, you might be able to do something with it in a very inexpensive way. So our costs for the image composite as editor, that's something that's free still out there. Photosphere viewer, that's free. Photoshop, I mean, not really free because we have an enterprise license through IT. And the same with our Esri image viewer. I mean, we are paying for that, but it's not a new ongoing cost, I guess is the point. So, and then you could spend all sorts of money if you wanted extra batteries, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to. You could just get your foot in the door. That might be enough to get a bigger budget for next year. So moving forward, this has been a big success, and I think we can very easily make the push for more advanced software to really automate the process of getting these images. It's very manually, it's very intense, manual, takes time. So I think we're at a point that we could make those proposals. All right, I'm going to exit out of here for more demos of our orthos and kind of how we use and publish out our imagery. Assuming I'll have to leave the presentation again. Yeah. Hold on, it's loading. I'm just waiting for it to load. Okay. Do I need to screen share again? Okay. This is our imagery viewer, which having just watched this load, I should probably turn off the default of having all these layers load simultaneously, but yeah. So now by default, if anybody goes to a city website, without having to do anything, the drone ortho imagery will be overlaid on top of the latest citywide. Pardon me for just a minute while I turn off all these layers. We do have imagery going back to the 1940s on our website. Should say we got it from the county, but okay. So if you zoom in on an area that we have imagery, you'll see it overlaid by default like this. There's a new travel lane here that if you either turn off or fade out the drone imagery, you can see that disappear. We also have links to some of those other products we have, like the photosphere viewer. So you can click on one of these things, see the image link. It'll tell you what kind of product it is. If it was for a project. Again, this will link to that photosphere viewer. Other window. No. Try that again. What I get for relying on conference center internet. Okay. Yes, that would be a good point. So this whole area in downtown used to be 2 one-way streets that were then converted to 2-way. So it was a kind of a big deal in terms of what was happening in downtown. So we'll show a project later on of got photospheres at all of the major intersections to show what they look like before those roads were open, and publish those out into a story map. I'll show that in a little bit, but we kind of just went to each intersection to see the new lane markings and just get a bird's eye view of what this looks like. All right, let me go back to my PowerPoint so I don't get off track here. So that's like a project kind of photosphere, but we also did some public outreach, or just, I guess you could say, just for fun. Not click on this link. I'm going to leave this just a second. All right. So in the fall, we decided to go around and kind of get some nice looking imagery. Didn't really serve a purpose other than to kind of show how beautiful Waukesha can be in the fall. And these are just fun to look at. And, you can always say it's extra training time on the drone. Get up there in the sky, some nice brisk fall morning, as I recall. So, and this could be used for if you have a new playground that's opening or something like that, just to get kind of a bird's eye view, a more natural look at what that's like. I wish we had taken one over the pool before it had opened. Yeah. We have done some videos. We didn't talk about that yet. Yeah. Let's see if that opens. No, there we go. Wants to open an edge, huh? See if that works. No. Don't do that.
Reminding me to use the microphone. So thank you, Fred. I was just going to add that one video that we took, or one of the early videos we took, which I think Brad is calling up right now. Oh,
I believe
no.
so.
Yeah,
See if
We've-
this can buffer fast enough.
yeah.
But this is helpful for the engineers to, kind of get a better look at the project as it's completed. Again, this is a video that's just hosted on the same server as Esri's image server. And kind of go down each project line, and this way you can see, I guess you could call it an inspection too, if you really wanted to check and see if there's some areas that hadn't been restored yet, that sort of thing. Yeah, these don't apparently display very well here, but yeah. Might come back to that in a second here. And similarly, we've done some scenic videos, I guess you could call it. I'll wait for that to load, go to something else in the meantime. But then we've also had created some specialized apps to really highlight specific projects. In this case, it was that two-way conversion. This is a ArcGIS online story map. So this is kind of telling the story of the St. Paul and North Street two-way street conversion project. There's a map that has the locations of all the photos that we have in here. You can click on any one of them, see what that intersection is going to look like. And again, this is so important for local people because this had always been a one-way street. So knowing now that you can actually go this way, you'll have to turn right here. It really just puts into perspective what it is they might be seeing on the map. Because I know that was a lot of complaints that we'd see on like social media, is that the project overview map isn't really informative as to what it's going to look like. So this really shows it. And this was, a couple weeks before these streets actually opened for traffic. So it was good information for folks.
Yeah, this was, as Brad has said, we can't really understate how big of a change this was for downtown. Like was for many people, like the way that they get to downtown. It was a huge task for our communications team and our engineers to communicate like what the new traffic system was going to be. So it was great that we were able to help them out with that.
Go back to our videos. Again, like during the fall, our downtown riverfront looks pretty nice. So we decided to stop down there. I think probably when we were just a block away taking photos for the St. Paul conversion, just popped over there and grabbed a video quick of the downtown. All right, so let me go through the last public outreach app here. This is another story map. This is what we kind of published out and administration had shared on social media of Waukesha's fall colors. So I don't know, I saw on Facebook somewhere up north they were doing something like this, and it just seemed like something cool if we ended up having nice colors, and we did. So a limitation of story maps is that you can only really link to videos through YouTube. So I bet these will actually play better because it's YouTube. Yes, you have a question? So the question was, is the setting to rotate while taking a video done manually or done automatically? In this case, it might have been manual, but that's one of the things that I've personally found really bad at is actually smoothly panning or doing anything. So you can kind of fake it by, if you go to like one of those intelligent flight modes, put it on landmark, but not have the landmark be basically right underneath the drone. You can kind of pivot around a central point. And if you gimbal the camera, it'll kind of do it by itself. So I think I might have another video in here that's a little clearer on that. So with the story map, you can go down to these various locations in the city, interact with the panel on the left. You can embed that photosphere viewer in a story map, which is really cool. So, you can go to the riverfront or City Hall. Here's a view from essentially right above City Hall. You can see downtown Waukesha here. Let me skip over to one of those videos that has, here's one. So I think we put probably is it landmark? Is that what it's called? Landmark mode? Yeah. You fly over a central set point and then you move as far away as you want to pan around. So I think we probably flew over to wherever this is pointing at. We flew over there, set that as to be the center of the circle that it's flying around. And then we just press record as it's flying and yeah, get these videos out. I'll go to where is it? My new favorite park. Another side benefit for me has been just seeing more of the city because we don't get out a lot as GIS folks. I see, I've seen a lot of the city from a map, but not really in person. So like Glacier Cone Park is this really cool, glacial mound that we hiked up to the top of. We've been there a couple of times just to get these, either get the photospheres or the videos.
This photosphere is kind of interesting and this project is interesting because if you look out into the background, you can see a new subdivision being put in. So that's, yep, over there. So
sometimes on clear days, you can see downtown Milwaukee, but it was kind of hazy, I think, on this day. So
yes, on a clear day, you can see Milwaukee. It's a fun little Easter egg.
All right. So I think, were there any other demos you wanted to do? We have about 15 minutes. We can break for additional questions or. Okay. Yeah, if there's any questions, fire away. Yeah, ideas, we're open.
What altitude do you typically fly your projects at?
Good question. The aerials, like 300 feet, seem to be the best. I mean, the higher up you get, the better, because then it's less building lean, less pole lean. We found that any lower than 300, you have to have a lot of overlap. There'll be a lot of lean. But at 400, I don't know how to do the math to figure out the resolution of what exactly that would be, but it seemed to be comparable to our sub 3-inch citywide aerials at 300 feet. So we generally fly around there if we can. If we can't get airspace authorization up to 300 feet, we'll do 200 if we have to. Otherwise, the photospheres, if you really want a nice panoramic view of the city, we go up to 400. If you're at like an intersection, we might do 50 feet, 100 feet to really just get that immersive experience. Yeah. Other questions?
What is your airspace then? Like what classification is it?
A big part of the city is Class D airspace.
Okay.
Yeah, so anytime we want to fly in the Class D airspace, if we want to do it within the regulated height for that particular quadrant, if you've ever seen one of those maps that shows how high you can go, the DJI software makes you unlock it. So we use LANC, LAANC. I don't remember what that stands for, but you can get instant authorization from the FAA to fly at a specific place. You can then upload that to DJI to unlock your drone to fly at that place. You can get additional clearance by going through a more manual process. Or if you're flying under one of those waiver situations, you might be free from those limitations entirely. So if we go on board with our PD and operate under their waiver, we might be able to unlock the entire airspace. We're still kind of evaluating if we want to go that route. So. Yes.
Have you, I noticed you have the Esri license with the advanced, have you explored using Esri to generate your orthos and doing the ortho rectification?
Like in Pro?
Yeah,
Yeah, I actually didn't know that function was in there.
it comes with the advanced license. I discovered that
Okay.
doing my research. So, because I have a Phantom 4 Pro Plus as well. I have the same setup you have.
Okay,
And yeah, since it came with it, it seems to work there. There's more manual steps involved as far as importing the data, but there's actually a workflow on the Esri website if you look it up, and it explains how to go through step by step to generate the ortho and
okay.
import your control points and get everything in there.
Were you in the workshop a few days ago on this?
Maybe.
Because I think I may have overheard you talking about it.
Okay, that's
I'm like-
probably me then.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I didn't know that existed. So like, hopefully this presentation isn't completely pointless. But
No. It's and there's always multiple ways to do stuff and come to the same result. So it's always interesting to see what other people. I'm from La Crosse County. We have a $0 drone budget. So
yeah,
I am, free to use software or, the Esri license that we already have.
Yeah.
I have to explore ways to generate stuff with, zero cost.
yeah, that's a good point. Whatever works. And we just kind of used whatever hammer we had
Yeah.
on hand to bang on it until it did. So yeah, that's a good way to start.
It was the prior versions of Pro, because I don't even know if I'm updated to 3 yet. I have to go double check mine.
Okay.
And also with the Phantom, I use Pix 4D Capture to do the collection. And there is a way to basically trick the controller into allowing you to run that app. And then once you do, then you draw your polygon of the space you want to collect.